So today, January 25th of 2023, happens to be the exact 4-year anniversary from the day that Nintendo informed the world that Metroid Prime 4 was scrapped and rebooted with Retro Studios, and basically they restarted the development of that game from the ground up. And today, on the 4-year anniversary of that announcement of the rebooting, we still know nothing about the game. However, we have a different and potentially very exciting rumor as far as Metroid goes to talk about that doesn't actually have anything to do with Metroid Prime 4. Before we jump into this, I do want to let you guys know that over on Game Explain's channel, this morning was actually posted a short little half-hour podcast between myself and Joey Ferris with Game Explain, where him and I discuss the 4-year anniversary of the delay of Metroid Prime 4, our thoughts about the game, the mystery behind it, and of course whether or not we'll even see the game this year or next year or anytime soon. So while you're here, you should definitely check the link in the description below and go and check out that cool little podcast I did on Game Explain's channel about Metroid Prime 4. But Metroid Prime 4 is surprisingly not the game we're actually talking about today. Instead, what we're talking about is this interesting piece of news that's going around and what seems to be a quote-unquote leak about a possible sequel to Metroid Dread being developed. So there is a lot that goes into this story today, and of course we always want to be careful whenever we're going into a story where someone is claiming to leak something that they've heard behind the scenes, or somebody who themselves is trying to start a bit of a rumor. And I've spent a lot of time over the past few weeks on some of my videos kind of touching on this and how somebody who claims that they have a leak or inside information is different than somebody who maybe speculates. And of course, on my channel, even though I've heard things over the years and knew some things that might happen before they do, I've only ever shared my opinions and predictions, whether it's about Metroid or if it's about next-gen stuff or just any random topic, from the lens of just being a fan who's speculating. But it's different when somebody claims specifically that they're leaking something, which is what we're talking about today. Somebody who had a successful Metroid leak a couple of years ago and is now basically doing the same thing today. So on Twitter, there's a user who is known as NashWeedle @nweedle, and this is a Spanish Twitter user who is reporting that they apparently know that Mercury Steam, who developed Metroid Dread, is also working on a brand new 2D Metroid game. We can't forget Mercury Steam themselves is a Spanish video game studio, and so a Spanish user having that potential inside information definitely is very interesting. And what's more interesting is that this person, apparently, I had no idea about this until this story, this person basically leaked the fact that Metroid Dread was the next 2D Metroid game before Metroid Dread was ever announced. I myself find that interesting simply because I had heard from a trustworthy source that I know that a 2D Metroid game, just blanket 2D Metroid, was a game that was being made and we should expect sometime in the future. I mean, quite a while before Metroid Dread was revealed. I didn't know when it was going to show up. I hoped it was at E3, and I certainly didn't know it was Metroid Dread. That was never told to me, but I was told that it was safe to believe in a new 2D Metroid game. However, I think even before I had heard that, this person had actually tweeted that they heard the next 2D Metroid game was going to be Metroid Dread, and we can see their tweet here. Of course, I have to use Google Translate to be able to translate what they're saying because their tweets are in Spanish. And so let's look at what they said way back in May of 2020, over a year before Metroid Dread was revealed. Leak Express, the new 2D Metroid for Switch could be Metroid Dread. It would be the sequel to Fusion. This game began development in 2003 for the Nintendo DS. Nothing else was known. In 2010, Sakamoto was asked if Metroid Other M was that game, and he replied that they are different games. So that was the May 2020 tweet, where basically, like I said, a year before Dread was revealed, this person confirmed that they had heard Metroid Dread was the next game, and maybe it was a lucky guess, or maybe it was a true leak that this person heard something real from Mercury Steam, and so they basically got that right. So what's happening today is that this person made another tweet that actually references that tweet, and now they're talking about a sequel to Metroid Dread. Here's what the newest tweet says from January 20th, 2023. So just a couple of days ago, they said this. When quote tweeting the 2020 tweet, they said, "I love recovering old tweets. The truth is that at that time in 2020, I had a lot of data, but the confirmation came a couple of months before the game was revealed. What I like the most about this now, when I tell you 2D Mercury Steam 2025, and I give you a winky face. So we're clearly relying on Google Translate, and maybe it comes off a little bit awkwardly with what it's trying to say, but essentially what we can take from this tweet, from this person who essentially knew that Metroid Dread was coming before it actually was revealed, is that they're saying that Mercury Steam is making the next 2D Metroid game, and they're saying it's going to come out in 2025. So there's a lot to dive into here, and it's all very interesting and potentially very exciting. Like I said, we don't know if we should even believe this, so that disclaimer is out there. We're just going off the information we have, and so now let's get to the fun part where we just talk about this, if it's true, if it makes sense, and what it could mean. So I think one of the more interesting things I took away from the original tweet in 2020 before Dread was revealed was that Sakamoto confirmed in 2010 when Metroid Other M was releasing. We can't forget, Metroid Other M came out in 2010. And so he was asked if that game was the direct sequel to Metroid Fusion, and he said no, they're different games. So what's important to note about that is Metroid Other M, it is canon. As much as everyone wants to hate it, it is a canon game. It was made by Sakamoto. It was featured in some of the secret art you could unlock in Metroid Dread itself. I mean, the game is canon, and it also does take place after Super Metroid. And that game itself then leads right into Metroid Fusion, which is Metroid 4, which was the direct prequel to Metroid Dread. And so it's one of those situations where at the time, it was a relevant question to ask if Other M was supposed to be treated as like a sequel to Fusion and basically have been Metroid 5, but it clearly wasn't, because that game takes place between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. Also, Metroid Other M, while it kind of falls more in line with the overall 2D narrative and the 2D game story, it's not a numbered game, okay? It is just Metroid Other M. It's not Metroid 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And so that's why Sakamoto gave a very important clarification that Other M, he didn't say it wasn't canon like a lot of people want to think because they don't like it. He just said it's not the sequel to Metroid Fusion. It's totally separate. And at that time, for all we know, Metroid Dread might not have yet been fully dead behind the scenes. So maybe he was still hoping Metroid Dread was going to get made, and that ended up still taking another, 11 years before it actually was seen from that time. And so then we come back to this person basically saying that they believe or they know, they actually say that they're essentially kind of leaking in a way, that in 2025 specifically, Mercury Steam's new 2D Metroid game will be releasing. It's very specific. They gave us a year. They said it's Mercury Steam. They said it's 2D. So I think we all jump to the idea of, is this going to be Metroid 6? If it's even real, are we talking about Metroid 6? Or could we even be talking about something that's more of like a Metroid Other M sort of side story that's not a numbered Metroid game, and it's not a Prime game, but it still kind of follows within the lineage, right? Either way, I think that a lot of this makes sense. And we can even revisit some other quotes from Sakamoto in 2021 when Metroid Dread was coming out, because he basically confirmed at that time that even though Metroid Dread represented the end of the 5-story arc of Samus versus the Metroids, he also confirmed that the series was going to continue beyond that. Here's what Sakamoto had to say around the time of Metroid Dread's release in 2021. He says, "As long as the character Samus exists, I think her adventure will continue. I feel that Samus should continue her adventure, and that's something that we would really need to put our best effort into. Metroid Dread does conclude the 5-story arc that has been going on for 35 years. However, I feel that it's not the ultimate end. There should be something that is able to continue the franchise and the universe. So yes, as long as your character Samus is loved, I would like to do what I have to do." Now, I myself covered this in a video at that time because I found it very exciting news. Metroid Dread was such an amazing thing to be releasing and to be playing, and hearing that it ended the 5-story arc of Samus versus the Metroids was both very cool and also a little bit worrisome, because what did that mean for the future of Metroid? Yes, Metroid Prime 4 has been in development this whole time, but, the timeline says that the Prime games happened way in the past, way before Metroid Dread. That doesn't mean Metroid Prime 4 can't jump ahead in time, but we don't yet know what they're doing, so the safe assumption is that that game still happens in the past. So what could the future of Samus's adventures be in the timeline after Metroid Dread? We don't know, but these quotes back in 2021 from Sakamoto himself says that there basically is a future for Samus and the Metroid franchise after Metroid Dread. So it all comes down to, is this person leaking something that's accurate? Are they guessing? Are they lying? Is this a real thing? We certainly don't know. I think that we can obviously pay attention to it simply because they were accurate with the Metroid Dread prediction back in 2020. And I think we can also just look at the facts and say it certainly makes sense. Why wouldn't Nintendo give Mercury Steam another Metroid game if they wanted to do it? Metroid Dread was a fantastic game. The fans love it. The critics love it. And it's the best-selling Metroid game. It became the best-selling Metroid game ever in only 6 months. That is crazy when you really, really think about it. And Metroid Prime 4 is coming hopefully sometime soon. Again, 4 years since the delay today, and we're still waiting on information. But we know the Metroid series isn't dead simply because Metroid Prime 4 is somewhere in our future. But the 2D Metroid games also probably have a future. Mercury Steam did great, so why not expect them to make the next game? And so then it's just exciting to think about if they want to call this Metroid 6, if they want to make this kind of a 2D spin-off game like Other M, even though Other M wasn't a 2D game. Like I said, it kind of falls in the more specific 2D timeline. It's really how that game is meant to fit into the larger puzzle of the timeline. And so, what are they going to make it? Are they even going to stop with the numbered games? Maybe Metroid Dread representing the end of that 5-story arc, like Sakamoto said, means that the numbered Metroid games are now over. Maybe the Prime games keep getting numbers, but that's a different kind of storyline. When we look at the main stuff going forward and the 2D saga going forward, maybe the last numbered game was Dread, and now every future 2D game just might feature subtitles. Metroid The Revenge, Metroid Samus's Big Day Out, Metroid, Samus Boogaloo, right? All these different titles. And it just keeps getting subtitles like what Metroid Other M was going forward. It's all just kind of fan speculation at this point. This rumor is interesting. This potential leak, if it's true, is very exciting. I think 99% of Metroid fans would love Mercury Steam to come back and make another 2D Metroid game. And if they do call it Metroid 6, it's even more exciting because that means they've found a way to continue the story. And given how Metroid Dread ends, without spoiling it, even though it's been over a year, there's a lot of different ways that the story could continue while also having wrapped up the original 5-story arc, right? That the end of that game was so fantastic and so thought-provoking, and I loved what they did. And it both concluded one arc and also set up a possible future for new arcs. So maybe I make a separate video theorizing about what that could be sometime soon, but for now, this is what we have to go on, and to me, it's extremely exciting.